What are the key go to market roles when you're introducing a new product or service? We're talking all about successful product launches on this episode of Closing Time. Thanks for tuning into Closing Time, the show for go to market leaders. I'm Chip House. I'm the CMO at Insightly CRM. I'm joined today by Karthik Suresh, who's the co-founder and CPTO of Ignition, a product launch application. Welcome to the show, Karthik.
Yeah, great to be here. Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I'm excited about this topic because I've been in SaaS for about 25 years and I've seen a lot of different product launches, right? And some go well, some don't go that well. And is it miscommunication or whatever at the heart of it? I'm not sure, but I'm excited to drill into it with you. So, what are your overall thoughts as I introduce this topic?
Yeah, this is something which is close to my heart, which is why we started Ignition. It's one of those things which has a huge impact on the product launch and adoption itself from your target audience, but one of the most underinvested processes in the company.
And why do you think that is? Why is it an underinvested area when it's so important?
Yeah, so I think the fundamental problem is because it involves pretty much when you're doing a product launch, most of the time it's like, oh, it's only the marketing team's job or it's only a specific team job to do the launch. But more often than not, it's actually a whole company coming together to do the launch. And you have various teams which are using fragmented tools and their processes to actually come together to do the launch. So what do I mean? So just to take a step back, what's a product launch? And so when you think of a product launch, first you need to think about, okay, when you're launching a new product in the market, then okay, what are the objectives of the launch? Who is my target audience? Like what's my ICP? Who's the persona I am targeting? And then once you know about the persona, and obviously assuming you have done a lot of research about the persona, then the next step is really trying to think about, okay, like how do I message the product to this persona so that they really understand the value prop. And then once you come up with the messaging, then you need to do a whole positioning exercise. You think about how do you position your product in the market with respect to other competitors? How do you differentiate yourself? Like why should people buy you versus another competitor? And then you need to think about maybe some pricing changes. There's a pricing exercise you should probably run. And then finally, like, okay, what are the list of marketing channels I'm going to use to actually market this product to get this product in the hands of the target audience we just talked about. And then once you finalize this plan, then you still got to execute it. You need to create collateral, copy and assets for all these marketing campaigns, get approvals from the execs, and then coordinate with the engineering teams to make sure the product actually ships on the specific date, especially if it's a software product, and then let the salespeople know and the customer success know that this is shipping, so they're not caught like surprised that this is a new feature ship and they never know about it. And so there's so many teams involved, and you need to do a really good stakeholder communication so that the whole company knows about this launch. They can all support the launch, and they can also talk about the launch in exactly the same way, so that they don't confuse the end customer. And then you do the launch. So this is like a whole process which probably takes a few days to a few weeks to a few months, depending on the tier of the launch. Basically, how big the launch is, how much money you're investing, and also having a tiering process is very important. And most of the time, at least in software companies, especially when we have moved to a more agile world and fast shipping, the product launch is almost like I ship my product to production and it's a launch, or I just send an email to my all my customers and it's a launch. I mean, no, it's not. And that's kind of a mentality which has been like so prevalent, and that's one of the main reasons why. And then to add to that, everything is fragmented because you have a launch brief with the marketing in some Google Docs, you have a launch checklist in some spreadsheet or Asana, and then your assets in Dropbox, and and sales teams are using different platforms, and like product teams are in some kind of a road mapping tool. So all of these have to come together, and they're all very fragmented, so it just adds more fuel to the fire. So there's like it becomes such a onerous task to actually pull together everyone to get on the same page. And more often than not, people are like, I'm just gonna ship to production, send an email to the customers and call it a day. and then maybe just go to my happy hour, right? That's that's typically what happens.
I've heard you describe this as it's like an orchestra, because you have so many different players involved, as you talked about engineering, product team, product marketing team, marketing more broadly, sales, and then downstream you have the support teams and the CS teams. They're going to field any customer questions, et cetera, on it, and even more teams, enablement, whatever, in a complex B2B organization. And so an orchestra has a sheet of music to all
Mhm.
follow, right? And so when I think about the first mover in this process, we don't have a composer, but we do have the engineering team who's producing the software. So what does the engineering team start out with to make sure this process goes smoothly?
Yeah. Yeah, orchestra is a perfect example. And before I answer the question, I think the person who is leading the launch is the main the person actually leading the orchestra, and that's more typically a product marketing manager. But on the engineering team side, I think there is also a fundamentally huge disconnect between engineering and marketing teams in most of the companies I've worked for. So, some of the things which engineering leaders can specifically do to ensure the product launch goes smoothly is keep the marketing team or the product marketer who's running the launch informed, proactively informed on the progress of the build. It's easy to, it seems obvious and it's common sense, but that's the fundamental disconnect because more often than not, like the marketer probably would have spent creating all these assets, collateral, scheduled email to go out to the customer, scheduled launch posts on LinkedIn and Twitter on let's say on September 15th, and the engineering team one day before, like, oh, you know what, sorry, we're going to delay the launch by another week. And it's one day before the launch, so then the marketing team has to scramble and update all the dependencies and change the times. I started my career as a software engineer, so I know both sides. So a lot of the time, engineers, they don't appreciate how much work which goes into a product launch, right? So it's like, what's a big deal? Yeah, I thought it's going to ship this Friday. It's not. It's going to ship next Friday. Just make the changes, right? And no, it's just like you don't understand how much work goes into it. All the dependencies and and I think so. This coming back to the main question here, there's two fundamental two things. One, no, appreciate the fact that planning a launch and executing a launch takes a lot of time and resources, and moving dates is very disruptive for the marketing teams. And second, so please proactively communicate on the status of the releases, especially if there are going to be delays, or if you foresee any delays, and make sure you do that like not just a few days in advance, at least a couple of weeks in advance.
Whose responsibility is that, Karthik? I mean, whose responsibility is that communication?
Yeah. So the communication. So the person running the orchestra is still the product marketer. Typically, I'm just going to use a product marketing manager, PMM, typically who's running the launch. Or there's in much larger companies, there are actually dedicated GTM teams which actually run the launch. And they are the ones who basically like doing a pull from each team as the launch date approaches. Like, with the marketing team on as all these assets ready, the copy ready, the engineering team is the shipping done, the PM team is like, do you get all the approvals for the launch and like all the things. So it should less be a pull and be a push, right? So the push then comes to the individual team owner. So if it's in this case, it could be a product owner or an engineering manager, depending on who's responsible for making sure the product is shipped well ahead of the launch and there's enough time for testing. And also there's different phases of the launch. There could be an alpha, beta, general GA launch. So each one has to be coordinated separately. So in this case, most of the times what I've seen is it's more of a pull where that's why it's a PMM or the GTM team keeps pinging people, engineers, PMs, saying, hey, is it done? Is it done? Are we on time? Did we do that? And then it's almost like annoying, like, hey, stop bugging me. I'll let you know. But they don't. Unfortunately, they don't let them proactively know. So that's why there's so many, I'd say, messages back and forth. But if each team, if you can identify clearly who's a stakeholder for each team, engineering, product management, sales, marketing, customer success, and then make sure there is like a dedicated person who is actually pushing the status versus pulling to the person running the orchestra, that would be an ideal setup.
Often with product launches, there's customers at the other end of this, right? That have specific needs, and they might be waiting on some of this functionality, especially if they've been exposed to the roadmap or vision of the product, right? They expect some of these things to come. And sort of the last people in line sometimes on the product launches are the customer facing people, the sales team, the existing business sales team, the CS team. And so, what are some of the things that those people can do when I think about like a salesperson to better educate themselves, to better prepare for a product launch?
That's a really good question, and it's so company specific. Depends on the company culture and how well the product launches are coordinated. In a lot of the organizations, I've seen that unfortunately, when the product launch happens, it's not communicated well. Maybe there's one email which goes out, and if you miss it, you don't know about it. So you're kind of caught blindsided when you see this new feature in the product you're trying to demo, and you don't even know what it is. Especially as a salesperson, that's very annoying. But I think it's less about the salespeople, making sure that they know. Of course, they have a responsibility to make sure that they fully understand the product and understand all the features and the benefits. But this is where the person who is running the orchestra comes in, and in this case, the PMM or the PM or the GTM team, it's their responsibility to make sure that everyone in the company knows what's shipping, when it's shipping, how it's going to impact the existing customers. Will it close new deals? Will it unblock some existing deals? Like do all that research and create like a launch brief and then send it around the company and then send it around multiple times so people actually get it, understand it, and use that in this. For example, salespeople use that in the sales process. Customer success teams know how to support that feature once it's live. So I think it's less of their responsibility and more of the responsibility of the person running the orchestra to make sure that everyone in the company, every team has their specific version of the launch. So the customer success team, they don't need to know all the technical details. They just need to know what are the most FAQs or what are the issues with this product. Salespeople need to know how they can sell it and how this differentiates from the other competitive products in the market. So it's up to the person running the launch to prepare these briefs on the launch and then send it to each of these teams, and then it's up to the team to actually make sure they consume it and then use it in the process.
Makes good sense. Well, this has been a phenomenal discussion, Karthik. So, any final thoughts for me?
Yeah, I'll just say like I think we ran a survey with the Product Marketing Alliance, and I think companies are leaving on the table like millions of dollars in revenue just by not being investing in the launch process, and therefore the customers not being aware of these all these new features and benefits which are shipping, and it affects upsells and which affects NRR, and then it can go on. So easiest ROI, especially in today's market when everyone's kind of scrambling for budget, and the easiest way you could get more revenue from your existing team is investing in a solid launch process. So
Well, Karthik, thanks so much. It was great having you.
yeah, thank you so much. It was a great conversation. Thank you.
Absolutely. And we'd like to do it again sometime. And thanks to all of you for joining us on this episode of Closing Time. And we'll see you next time.